Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Jan Kwak, who's the managing director of Australia and Asia at Hatch, who are a global multidisciplinary leader in engineering, operational and development company with projects in metals, energy and infrastructure across the globe. With more than 3 decades of experience at Hatch, Jan has cultivated a hands-on approach to business, playing a pivotal role in its growth to its current state, and is a strong advocate of inclusive cultures in engineering and the workplace. He believes that all who show passion and dedication to their vocation should have a chance to grow and thrive. We're going to talk about growing gender diversity in STEM industries, as well as emerging industry trends. So let's welcome Jan to the podcast. How you doing, Jan?
Hello, Rob. Good morning for you. Good to meet you. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, and yourself. Really appreciate your time in obviously taking the time to do a podcast with us. And as we always start these podcasts off, and I know you've been listening to a few of our episodes, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background, about your career? Obviously, you've had a long career with Hatch. So I just wondered if you can let the audience know, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, for sure. You can ask yourself, so why am I sitting with you today? It's because I'm passionate about the mining industry. Myself, married, my wife Anna and I live here in Brisbane. Very proud father of 2 daughters. I got sent by my work to Australia 24 years ago, and I met my wife here, and we've lived happily ever since. It's been wonderful. I'm a chemical engineer. I studied chemical engineering in Canada at McGill years ago. And I've worked my entire career for Hatch, 30 years now, as you said. Having a chance to work all over the world, every stage of mine development. I've become passionate about the mining industry. For all the things you see as you go around, you see some wonderful things, some awe-inspiring things, and frankly, some terrible things in different parts of the world. But you become passionate. It's a fantastic community. We do important work for society, for the world, and it just fills you with a desire to make it better, and to contribute more to society at large. To frame it a bit more about the topic we're on today, Rob, I'm the MD for Hatch in Australia, Asia. Hatch is a large engineering and technical services provider across a lot of industry, but we're the biggest in mining, I believe. And the mining industry itself that we serve, what I see is the mining industry is in a period of really rapid change. There's an adaptation. There's whole new things happening that we need to respond to and think about how mining should serve society's needs at the highest level, right? Creating financial, social, and environmental value. And to do that, we just can't keep doing things the way we always have done. We need new things, new ideas, new ways. And, the case for inclusion and diversity comes from that, I think. We have all these new challenges. We need fresh thinking, new ideas, and getting diversity of thought into our industry is a big deal. It'll make us stronger and more sustainable. And it's a lever we haven't used enough in industry. So that's why I've become an advocate out of my passion for the industry and making it better, to also making sure that we get a good diversity of thought and basically more women and diversity in the industry.
Before we go on to speak about, obviously, diversity and inclusion, being a recruiter, you've been with Hatch for 30 years now. That is a long time with one company, and and to tell the truth, rarely seen. How have you seen the company evolve? And obviously yourself being with the company for 30 years, and obviously you've moved into various roles up the hierarchy. How have you seen the company change, and how have you stayed with the company for so long? Because as I said, it's rarely seen.
It is rarely seen, except in Hatch, actually. There's a lot of people in the company that have also been here a long, long time. And I think a couple of the ingredients that make it work well is we're a very flat organization. We've got a very deep culture that I think is right for creating positive change, for impacting the communities we serve, the industries we serve in an innovative way. You know, we like to do very difficult things. We like to tackle the industries, the world's toughest challenges. And what happens when you kind of run a flat organization that's focused on important things like that, you attract great people and they don't want to leave. So how has it changed? It's changed in the topics we're dealing with. Every 5, 10 years, the imperatives from industry change, but the culture is amazingly fairly consistent since when I started in 1994. It's quite incredible.
You mentioned obviously people stay for long periods of time at Hatch. What do Hatch do differently to other companies? Because obviously I see people move around, and I would say on average, people moving around every 2, maybe 3 years. But obviously there's a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of people at Hatch that are staying there for long periods of time. What is Hatch doing differently to maybe other companies
Yeah,
to keep their staff?
yeah, good. Well, I think we have long, good management. Well, a big factor is we're private. We're owned by ourselves. We don't respond to what investment communities want us to do. We do what we want to do. And we want to have the partners in the company want to have a long-term sustainable business and keep everyone in it for the long term. You do that for a while, you find that you can deliver excellent results. You know, teams that have been together for a while and worked together for a while are so much more efficient. You know, like anyone, we struggle. People in the 7-year itch is real, right? Not everyone is cut out for the kind of company we are, but the people that stick with it really, it resonates. They really enjoy technical challenges. They really like the lack of hierarchy, really, that we focus on interesting technical and service challenges and deliver. It kind of works, Rob. It's fascinating. No, I've only ever worked for Hatch, so it's hard for me to compare to others, but it does work.
Yeah. Obviously, talking about diversity inclusion, have we passed the peak of
Yeah.
diversity inclusion?
Yeah, that's a good question. I deliberately provocative comment that past the peak. And what's behind that, in my mind, I've been saying that, is that the conversation needs to progress. Because we're a little bit of a tipping point where the conversation could go the wrong way, and this could become politicized. So there's been a period of dealing with D&I that has been, you know, starting with women just saying this isn't fair, this isn't right. We like this kind of work, we want to do it. And there was a responsive policy and procedure and basically the actionable actions to try and create better gender equity. There's a danger now that if we just keep pushing policy and rules and function and form, it's going to be politicized, and you know it'll become a woke topic. We've already seen in the States, you know, I think in Florida, the governor has now blocked any funding for diversity programs or equity and inclusion programs, and in doing that, they're missing the point. It's becoming political, and it's missing the business case for why these things are actually additive to improving the economy, improving business. So we're at that tipping point where we got to now move on to what really this is about, which is culture, which is the normalizing what is an inclusive culture, and get it away from politics. The tipping point, the peak, is if it goes into the political realm, and then it becomes left-right politics, and it's a shouting match, right? That's not going to be useful or productive. Businesses need to take a pragmatic view and figure out that there's a business case here, and go towards what gives the best business case, which I'm a firm believer is having diverse teams.
You mentioned culture. What would you say is an ideal culture
Uh-huh.
for a business?
Yeah. So it starts with inclusion, right? People need to feel it's psychosocial safety. People need to feel they belong, feel they have a voice, and the culture, the winning culture, is the one that has room for all the voices to make the best decisions. The there's Mining suffers because it's a culture of that's formed mostly by men. It's historically that way, and it is that way. That's okay where we are, but it's where we go to next that matters. And it's interesting, the more I've studied this and read books about this and learned, there's things that you learn in the schoolyard when you're a boy that are different from what a girl learns. Boys learn to be assertive, to be competitive, to be aggressive, and they're rewarded for that. They win competitions, they're louder, they're stronger than the next person. Girls that behave like that will be ostracized. Girls end up, it normalizes in and I see this with my kids. They normalize and they create friendships around different things, not about being the loudest or the strongest, but about sharing, about caredness, about showing vulnerability to an extent, different traits. And these things continue on through adulthood and they end up being a part of the cultures in the workplace, right? So, and these are unconscious biases. I have them, you have them. We both grew up as men in the schoolyard. It's amazing when I talk to men about these things, about the unconscious biases that are in us. They say, "Oh, I had no idea, no idea that I was doing that." Simple things, Rob, like talking over women, of interrupting, of mansplaining is the term that's been so feeling a need to explain things that are obvious, or repeating or taking credit for what a woman's saying but through a man's voice, are things that are just normalized, and we learn them young. They're in our unconscious bias, and it's a lot of the work in the culture is around now recognizing where that is and normalizing a new culture where there is space for for women to participate equally. That's the culture I'm looking for, the inclusive culture.
How can the mining industry address the gender pay gap? And is it improving?
Yeah, so that's a very topical one as well. Here in Australia, the government is about to publish for the first time the gender pay gap of every major company in the nation over a certain size. I think 100 employees or something like that. The UK does that already. Other countries, in Canada, I think, is thinking about doing it shortly. And it's interesting. So it's going to become topical. It'll be in the news in the next few weeks here in Australia. The gender pay gap is a measurement of something far deeper. It's taking a step back. Mining is still largely a club run by men of a certain demographic. You can probably name it, and importantly, the people in the senior leadership roles therefore are using what's normal, their worldview, their unconscious biases are cooked into the decisions they make. Interestingly, mining's missing out at a time when we need new perspectives, new ideas. We have to think about social license to operate, about new flow sheets, about new ways of operating a business. We're missing out on many different points of view. Now, the gender pay gap is just a way of measuring the lack of women in senior roles, right? If a company has more men in the high-paying positions than women, then there's going to be a pay gap. It'll be zero when women are just as likely to be in a senior high-paying role as a man is. It's as simple as that. And so I think it's actually a good measure that people are using. Now, how do you address it? We find at Hatch, we've had fairly good success, and I think most companies have, of being able to recruit graduates in fairly good proportions. Getting women into the industry is not as hard as it seemed a decade ago. We've kind of crossed some of that. It's keeping the women in the industry. And when I talk to women in the industry in Hatch, Many tell me, look, I'm exhausted. Male behavior is just hard. It's constantly an uphill battle. There is a natural lack of respect for women. Women's authority is undermined in subtle ways. That's what we have to address. When we can address those little things that hold women back from opportunity to take senior roles, then if we're able to address it, then we can address the gender pay gap. So it isn't about paying women more at all. I think the industry should rightly be a meritocracy where people are paid for contributing in a big way. If we get rid of the unconscious biases that block women from being able to contribute, then we will get women into senior roles, and then the pay gap diminishes. That's a long-winded
And
answer of how I got
yeah,
there.
and have you seen an increase in females getting into senior and executive positions? Because obviously
Yeah.
this topic's probably been around for quite a while. Have you
Yes.
seen an increase of women
Yeah.
getting into those senior positions?
I think so. So this is the first year we're going to see it across the board. I know Hatch's numbers. Hatch has gotten better incrementally, not as fast as I would like, of course, but it has gotten better. The industry probably, and kudos to BHP and Andrew McKenzie. Actually, around a decade ago, BHP made the call. No, we're going to force this issue. And I've seen it in the companies we work with and the clients, especially BHP and some of the other major miners. I'm now as often I'm dealing with counterparts that are women than men, which is great. So those are kind of anecdotal signs that it's different. And that actually that single move in this case by BHP changed the industry, right? Hatches in the services and we have to reflect our clients. When our clients were mostly old white men, they wanted to deal with other old white men. Now that I've got clients that are a full spectrum of diversity, I need to have a full spectrum of diversity in my company to respond. So it's kind of working. And and anecdotally, and just by my visual data points, it's happening. I'm really curious to see when this gets quantified a bit more.
How do you think the industry can improve women's participation in sort of engineering degrees and careers? Obviously, you mentioned obviously the females keeping them in the industry. How do you? I mean, I suppose this is not just necessarily females, but overall, there's a lot. There's not as many people entering our industry, but if we can obviously encourage females to come into the industry, what do you think we need to improve?
Yeah, look, so there's the obvious things, right? STEM in high schools, scholarships. Those are the easy, actionable actions. They're kind of policy and process driven and just throwing money at it, which is great. Nothing wrong with it, but I think it's the minority of the answer. The majority of the answer is the industry brand and the role models and the figureheads that speak for it. Young girls, young women look for someone they want to be like. That looks like the kind of thing I would do. I feel like I would belong there. Our industry does not look like a place that's attractive for women. Young girls choosing where they're gonna want to work with people that feel like they belong there. So it is really, really important that that the terrific senior women in the industry are visible. And it's a burden on them. It's actually additional work that the industry needs that group of people to do, a small group, but they're fantastic role models. And I wish my daughters could have more exposure to senior women in mining, maybe they'd join the mining industry. So that's a big deal. And another really important one is that it is about the men, right? Men need to own this issue. This is not an issue for women to sort out amongst women. This is really about men creating space and being inclusive and normalizing what inclusive behavior is. Those are probably the biggest things: role models and inclusive behavior driven by the men in the organizations.
What does Hatch offer to obviously help kickstart and nurture new engineers into the mining industry?
Yeah, so the things we talked about just now, of course, we do that. Scholarships, high school outreach, junior high reach, outreach. Even amongst Hatch families, we encourage every year we'll do a bring your kids to work day of some sort to let the kids understand what it's like to do this kind of a job. So scholarships, of course, we do. Providing mentorship to people in university. So that's what you would expect, and we do that, and we're proud of it, and we enjoy it. Once we get the women in the door, then we have a whole program we're proud of called our professional development program, which is a 3 years journey for everyone that joins. But it's tailored to be aware of unconscious biases and aware of how men and women network differently, grow differently, and need role models. So we've been very successful with this. We've ended up being, for 6 years in a row, a top graduate employer, because the feedback we get from men and women is that this is fantastic. This is creating opportunity and a place where I feel like I can belong. Which for me, that's when I hear that kind of thing, I feel like I belong here. Then I know I've caught it, and we're onto the right topics.
You mentioned obviously men are probably the driving force behind this. What can sort of male leaders do to encourage more inclusivity in the workplace?
Yeah, that's we need to talk about men. So I've kind of talked about it a bit already, but let's come back on that one. The men are of the big ones left to deal with. Men are the bigger challenge. I think we dominate the workplace, and we are unaware of our own unconscious biases and the ways in which we undermine women's authority. Even the most progressive men that on this will tell me. I talk to people all the time about this. They'll tell me, I'm not biased. I think it's wonderful that women get great careers. I know that, but yet those little things, interrupting, mansplaining, diminutizing, preferencing men over women happens. So it's men that need to create space and inclusiveness for women to succeed in the majority, right? The what do men? How can men do that? They have to be. I really understand it now. Male champions for change is a big deal. Men need to be out talking to other men of what is acceptable and what is normal. Unless men do that, we won't be able to normalize a new culture. It will not work for women trying to explain to men why they need to be inclusive. It's just it's the way our brains are wired and that male behavior. So the biggest thing men can do is be a male champion for change. Be aware of our own unconscious biases, and then talk about that out loud, and let other men know that that's normal, that's acceptable, that's the way we do things. We create space for people, and it catches on quickly. We've been on this journey on the culture part for a few years now at Hatch. Once we had done the necessary initial groundwork, and you see the difference, you start accelerating in this space.
And and I suppose on the flip side, what would you say to females within our industry that are looking to get into higher positions and maybe to break through into those executive positions? What would you say to them, and how would they try and maneuver themselves into being I suppose in a position to move up a hierarchy within a mining company?
Yeah. So first of all, there's a fantastic book on that topic called The Authority Gap. I'll just break that book for a moment. I have nothing to do with it. I read it and I found it inspiring, by Marianne Sieghart. That book is exactly on that topic. And as I read through it, I could see so much in there that made a lot of sense for me. There are things women need to do. Women need to be more confident. Right, there's a confidence gap or a confidence trick. Men tend to be confident, or people. Sorry, not even men. People need to mistake confidence for competence, right? And women are equally sometimes more competent than men, but they won't have the confidence. So, the initial steps forward are to be confident in yourself and stand up for what you believe in. It does work. Now, admittedly, women need to do that in a different way. Women that come out abrasive and loud, to your average man who is unaware of his unconscious biases, will react badly to that. A man doing the same thing, they'll be okay, but a woman doing that will not be accepted, will be ostracized. So women do have to approach it in a different way, a more caring and understanding approach, but still that confidence has to be there. So, but I'm no expert on this for the women listening. I really recommend that book. There's others as well, I'm sure, but I found that one particularly insightful. It taught me a lot. But I would say it starts with confidence and assertiveness in a woman way rather than a man way.
And do you think inclusive companies that close the gender gap will outperform those that don't?
I really think so. I really think the kind of challenges mining industry faces, be it operators or technology companies or service companies, we need better ideas, right? The companies that will win are the ones that can deal with change the best, that are the most resilient, that have the best ideas, the best innovation, and the ones that can adapt. And those are the ones that are inclusive, that they're able to hone in on the best ideas through the council of many. So in the long run, those companies have to win, and we'll see it. I'm positive, and I see it today. Companies that are not dealing with this are not as competitive, are not able to keep up in this fast-paced world. I see it all the time. They're falling down, and eventually they're realizing, okay, either I'm going to sell out or I'm going to have to deal with this. So I think it's a big deal.
Yeah. There's the Women in Mining organisations, and there's various bodies around the world. What are your thoughts on them as an organisation? I've had a few of their representatives on the podcast. They seem to be growing as an organisation around the world. Just wonder what your thoughts are on them. What else could they be doing?
Very important, right? To a woman thinking about joining the mining industry, it's in a daunting place. It's full of men. So to have a place where you can find mentorship, people that understand what you're going through, people understanding the dilemma you're facing and can give you advice and role model and help it's an important support network. I think it's fantastic. I only wish that they would do themselves out of business. In the sense that there's enough inclusiveness and enough gender balance in the industry that kind of external support isn't necessary. But that's still a way to go. So I think it's fantastic what those kind of groups do, and we're big supporters of many of them.
Yeah, great. And lastly, what do you think are two trends that you're seeing the mining industry during 2024?
Yeah, good one. Maybe if I can just break that question apart for you, Rob, I'll just do it two ways.
Yeah.
There's what I hope we will see, and there's what I think we will see. A little bit different. So what I hope, maybe first, I really hope, so I'm moving a bit beyond, if we get all these benefits of diversity and inclusion, I hope that the circular economy becomes real. Right, we talk about it, but it's not real yet. It's not been internalized. We don't understand what circular really means for the mining industry and for the supply industry. So both industry and government policy will hopefully start to understand what that means. And the second thing I hope we see more of in 2024 is companies trying new things. No more keeping on doing what we've always done, but let's just give things a shot. It's time to start innovating again, and fail fast, fantastic. Be agile, fantastic. But let's try things. I think the mining industry, for a whole bunch of very good reasons, has been very conservative for a long time, and now we need to increase the pace of change and innovation, and that happens by trying things. That's what I hope happens. What I think, maybe a bit more down to earth. I've been quite amazed in the last year as I visit conferences and go to the odd trade show or convention. The there's a lot of AI and digital showing up in the industry. And what I think will happen this year is we'll finally start to move beyond the fad part of digital and AI into real crunchy, value-added use of AI in a big way, and that starts to get adopted. This industry moves very quickly, and I think we'll quickly move from the vaporware part of it to the real applications that create value in the hands of companies. So that's exciting, and I think it's quite possible this year. The other one that I think will happen is that the energy transition will start to deal with real options. So, for a while we had this idea that we'll just build solar farms and wind farms and we'll sort it out. And, as we all start to do the math and think about the real math behind hydrogen and green steel and all these things we want to do, the energy balance doesn't work very well. There's mismatches everywhere. And I think that this year we'll start to finally look at real options, the real serious power, electricity we need to transform. Is going to be things like nuclear. It's going to be dealing with really serious transmission issues, hydropower on a massive scale, hydro storage. Things will probably rationalize around where hydrogen really does make sense. It's not a silver bullet that solves every issue. It solves a subset of issues where hydrogen is a chemical or hydrogen is the only option. So real options and real, thought through solutions will start to come through in energy that we have not seen at scale to date. And that's exciting. Both those, digital and energy transition, will be exciting this year, I think.
Jan, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you coming on the podcast and obviously speaking about an important subject. And I know a lot of our listeners will listen to this and obviously share this episode amongst people within our industry. And I suppose it's not just our industry, it's other industries as well. So really appreciate your time in talking about inclusivity and diversity, because obviously it is an important subject and it needs to be improved as obviously as you highlighted. If our audience wants to sort of see more of your work, how can they go about doing that? Obviously, you'll probably go to conferences and speak about this subject. So, just wondering how they can follow some of your
good question. So, I'm fairly frequent on LinkedIn and social media. If you Google Hatch, you're going to find a lot of material there of what we're thinking about here. You're right. Conferences. I try and take every opportunity when I'm at a conference to make some comments about D&I. This is male champions for change, right? That's got to be done. So, or just reach out to me if they're interested and want to talk more. Just reach out on LinkedIn and we'll find a way to connect. Happy to do that. And Rob, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoy a chance to talk about this topic and share points of view.
Yeah, and like I said, appreciate your time. And again, people that are going to be listening to this can maybe, and especially the males listening to this, maybe they can just think slightly differently and maybe then act upon it, just to obviously help with bringing women into our industry and trying to make them excel into more senior positions. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Right on. Cheers.
No worries. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Really appreciate your continued support. It's an important topic. Please share this episode, obviously to people within our industry, but people outside of our industry, because if we want to improve the image and branding of mining, we need to share these episodes. And this kind of episode can be listened to anyone in any industry, because it's obviously an important subject that doesn't just apply to the mining industry, but does apply to other industries. So please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.